You're repealing.
We're doing it, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, welcome everybody. We'll call to order the December 5th Planning and Administration Committee. We do have a quorum. Councilmember Houston and myself are on the committee, and we're joined by other members of council as well. First item of business is ordinance 2223 to accept the dedication of 0.003 acres of property to create a sidewalk easement declaring an emergency. It relates to 1217 Grandview Avenue. We had a committee meeting about this at the mid-month, and did recommend approval to the full council. Any additional discussion needed there, or Mayor Kearns, do you want to share any additional information?
Additional. Happy with the improvements. This is the one, we have several of these. This is the one in front of the chiropractor building, right?
It is. Yep. Okay. No further discussion?
Did we already have a motion to recommend on that one for last meeting?
We did.
Okay.
Yep. We made a recommendation to recommend approval to full council. Next item on the agenda, 2022-24, to grant a 0.772 acre easement on a portion of property related to the new middle and high school parking lot. We also did discuss this at the November 21st committee meeting, and did make recommendation for approval to the full council. Any additional discussion there?
No.
Mayor Kearns, anything additional there?
No, thank you.
All right, moving on. Item number 3, ordinance 2022-27 to amend the salary ordinance. Did not meet on this at the last committee, so I will kick it over to Mayor Kearns, the sponsor, to share a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I think I explained at the original budget meeting on this. The planning and community development specialist, obviously that's the position that was just discussed at the 5 p.m. meeting, and spoken to by Director Kelker. Our structure is such that we need to have a defined position with a salary ordinance associated with it in order to staff that position. So that correlates with the budget. The public works coordinator and building inspector technician too are market-related adjustments, particularly in the building department. We went almost a year with only having one inspector. Had a really difficult time, recruiting. It's a field that obviously you might realize with the construction industry like it is in Central Ohio, and the market conditions that we're happy that we have 2 talented inspectors now. So we want to treat them fairly. And same thing with public works coordinator.
Sorry, this is kind of a refresher. I think you said this last time. The planning and community development specialist is set up to be more of an entry-level position?
Yeah, entry, maybe a few years on them, but definitely somebody who's developing their career, not some kind of later career.
Okay. And they likely come with a planning, like city and regional planning kind of background?
Most
Yes.
likely.
Okay.
The only, just had a few things. You had mentioned in the previous meeting, the planning and community development role will help us to just have the in-house capabilities rather than having to look to outside resources.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any additional information to share to that. That was one of the things that I had noted here that I just wanted to ask about, so I wonder if you could expand upon that or talk a little bit about how that will kind of be a benefit to us. And I guess I would couple it by saying, heard a little bit in conversation about not having interns. From my perspective, it seems as though that'll allow us to have a continuity of knowledge about the things that we're working on, rather than have you guys in a position to need to kind of re-educate at a 6-month or every year basis. So just wonder if you could share a little bit more about that.
Yes. So, a lot of, around anywhere really, a lot of planning does happen in-house. And with the interns that we had, we were able to do a lot of that. So a lot of times it's either it's an early stage or something that you're testing out but not sure you want to move in a particular direction. So for instance, a few things that the interns did that would be examples of things that these folks, this hire might do. One of them did a preliminary plan for the Parks and Rec building so that we didn't have to hire somebody outside to do preliminary planning like we did hire for the police fire administrative building. We did a study for the Parks building in-house using the interns that we had, so that would be an example. I also had the interns do some preliminary studies of our dense cores and start looking at how those might evolve over time to give myself a kind of idea of what might be needed next to push some of those opportunities forward. Also, as I mentioned with zoning, reviewing projects. So as a for instance, we have projects that come in for zoning review, and some of the lower level ones may be able to be helped by a lower level person, but also when there's approvals at planning commission, then the design teams go off and do their thing, and they come back with a finished plan and want to get that permitted for a permit. But there's been often some time. So for instance, we just got there's a little bridal shop going in down the street, and we heard it in planning commission half a year ago. Well, there are things that can change in half a year, and so those plans actually need re-reviewed to make sure they comply with what planning commission said. And so those re-reviews are things that I've been doing that the younger staff person can do, and they may write the staff reports, and they can do density studies. They helped develop a database in conjunction with finance when we sent out surveys for the economic development strategic plan. They went door to door and dropped notices for some of our area plans that we were doing. Just all these kinds of things that somebody needs to do, and I don't really have time to do. So does that answer your question? It's kind of all over the place.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, we have been in process over the last several years of the 2019 plan. The economic development plan is forthcoming. We have in the budget, First Avenue planning. And so part of my reflection on this is we have all of those many things that are going on. You currently are a staff of one, and there are a lot of proposed implementation activities that are within those things that lacking staff to be able to do it, it'll remain recommendations. And so I'm excited that we have an eye towards implementation and the things that we're doing.
That is exactly right. The opportunity is there to be very proactive, and that would just have to slow down if it's only me.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussion from committee members or other members of council?
Are these go through the civil service or not? They do, okay. And do we have, what kind of background, I guess, do the technicians, he said that was a difficult mayor.
Building inspector?
Yeah, the kind of background with the building inspectors.
I would encourage you to think of building and zoning. We have a building and zoning department, but as Director Felker mentioned earlier, her office ends up in effect doing a lot of the zoning review because it really is a different professional path. If you go back to the prior administration, the mayor and the director of administration had that professional background, and it was also done that way then. But the code puts it in building and zoning. So think of it as two different things: safety and inspecting kind of the integrity of construction of a building and plans for that versus zoning clearance, two different things. The building inspectors have an eye towards safety, construction, the electrical systems, foundation, those sorts of things. And there's obviously the certifications that go along with that.
And then do we have kind of different ways that we promote our job descriptions out to try to get in front of BIPOC communities in addition to or just, specifically making sure those opportunities are getting out to marginalized communities, BIPOC communities?
Well, I don't know exactly what you mean in terms of methods, but they're widely disseminated. As I said, we researched. We're always looking at expanding our reach.
Yeah.
Those large platforms have a broad reach, but they keep evolving. And I'll be honest, part of the HR consulting, I think, will help us with that. We've improved it over the last year, but it's always, can always go broader.
Yeah, I'll have to, if I can remember, I can go back and look at what we've done a little bit at OEC, the Hiring Model Council, some of our hiring. I'm not sure if we look at historically, we got to some of the historically black colleges or not, but we've had some different things that we
Yeah, typically these positions are not gonna be entry level.
But this one is too well.
The specialist position.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the other one, the planning and community development is an entry level.
I thought you were talking about the building inspector.
Yeah, I was before. My mind switched over, but my voice isn't. Okay, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great. Any other discussion from other members of council? I'd entertain a motion.
I'm happy to move to recommend approval to full council.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you for that. This is just a second reading, so we'll come back to full council with the third reading. Items 4 through 7 on this agenda relate to some type of easement and encroachment. So we'll go through them one at a time and have an opportunity to hear more about those. Number 4 is 2022-34 ordinance to grant the city of Grandview Heights a sanitary sewer easement with respect to 0.168 acres of real property along Cat Avenue. I'd ask the mayor to share a little bit more on that.
And I get confused, so I'll ask Director Caliber. I basically need to run the sewer there. That's what it comes down to.
It is really easiest actually to take all 4 of these together.
Okay.
So there are 3 that are easements being granted to the city by NRI or various entities associated with NRI, and that's why there's 3, is because there's different owners by name, but I think it's safe to refer to them as all NRI. So there could have been only one if the parcels were all owned exactly the same, but they're owned slightly differently. So that one is great. So when Bobcat was constructed, there was literally not space to put this new sewer in the street. So the private owner allowed us to put it on their property and agreed to grant the access easement for maintenance back to the city. That just hasn't been recorded yet, so that's kind of what this is. 2 of the 3 parcels have already been developed, so it's sort of retroactive milling, which is slightly different because there's 2 that are retroactive. One is prospective, the one where there is a new multifamily unit being developed just south of the park. The third one is also with regard to that parcel where a new building is being proposed south of the park, and will be an easement being requested from the city back to the private owner to allow them to encroach a little bit into the easement that they granted us. Because they just, the geometry is a little bit angled, and so they're clipping the corner of the building. And we went through, I discussed with our city engineer kind of standard practice for something like this, and also discussed with Director Darrell Hughes practically, if there's an impact, and they advised some changes to the building foundations so that we're not supercharging the ground above the sewer. So those are documented and included. I think you have all those engineering drawings in your packet. And then there's also a little bit that falls under landscaping and sidewalks and things like that. So also really not problematic as a practical matter. So those are all for housekeeping to kind of continue to make clear who has responsibility to do what and who is permitted to do what. With approval of all 4 of those, the next step related to that proposed multifamily building, which is being referred to as the Devon, would be a review for certificate of appropriateness from a design perspective, and then they'll be able to submit for a building permit and start construction, which they'd like to do as soon as possible.
All right, thank you very much for that. Any discussion from committee members?
It's a very small acreage for the Devon Apartments. You know what that amounts to in feet or yards?
Approximately 300
We
square
talked about that
feet.
last time, 300 square feet.
No, that was about
Something else.
the one, yeah, the good grade.
There is, I think, one, I'm looking for your comment here, there's one minor addition or change to the, I believe, preamble language that we would like to propose. I've got too many things open, I'm having trouble finding, it's the one that refers to the most southern parcel that also runs along, what's the name of that road? I apologize, my computer is not reaching the internet, so it's not finding it.
Is that,
No, there's just, we're only referring to Bobcat, and need to also refer to, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at my phone, because I can't get my computer to connect to the internet.
Dr. Kelker, which one are you speaking to? Ordinance 2022-37?
It is the ordinance for 950. Should also reference Williams Avenue.
I'm not with you. Are you with Victor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So 950 is the 2022-34.
No.
So we need to make an amendment to the preamble to reference Williams.
Correct. Joel,
Wait, is it 950 Dorchester Way or the 950 Bobcat? Because there's 960 Bobcat and 950 Dorchester. Yeah, I was trying to find it in my email.
they're supposed to be 1 feet.
None of my internet is working.
950 Dorchester
I
Way?
think it's the Dorchester. Let me see
The
the
easiest thing would be to look at the exhibit, right, so the one that comes down. Yes.
I think it is the one that's
It is
950
20
Dorchester LLC.
It is 34, 2022-34.
So there's Bobcat Avenue and Williams Avenue. You're saying
Right.
Williams Avenue needs to be added in?
It just should, in the preamble, should say sanitary sewer with respect to 0.16 acre real property located along Bobcat Avenue and Williams Avenue within the Grandview Yard.
Okay.
So we would just ask for the recommendation to be made with amendment.
Okay. On these, can we treat the recommendation as a whole, or do we need to go through them individually?
The recommendation can be done collectively.
Okay, so,
I'm sorry, just to further clarify though, that's the only ordinance that needs that correction made?
Correct. The other two are both along Bobcat only, but
Okay.
that one turns the corner.
So, so we're amending one, and then, but you're saying, Director Sam, we just need one recommendation for all of these?
Yeah, I mean, this is committee.
Right,
Yeah.
what's
So that's
that?
one.
Okay.
so I would entertain a motion to recommend approval on agenda items 4 through 7 with the amendment in addition of Williams Avenue to ordinance 2022-34.
So moved.
Second.
Is that sufficient?
Yeah, second.
Joel?
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that covers our agenda, and so we will adjourn at 6:23.